In the tangled web of a forest floor, a fallen oak becomes a universe unto itself. Fungi thread through its decaying tissues, recycling atoms that once formed living wood. Beetles burrow complex highways beneath peeling bark while microbes transform what remains. This scene of decomposition and renewal plays out billions of times across Earth's surface daily, a microcosm of a truth so profound it reshapes how we understand life itself. Every atom in that tree, in those fungi, in those insects, none originated on Earth. We often think of species as discrete units, evolving through time, born of previous forms. But when we pull back to view life at its most fundamental level, atoms and molecules, we discover something remarkable. Every living creature represents a temporary arrangement of borrowed materials. In 1957, astronomer Fred Hoyle and colleagues published their groundbreaking paper on stellar nucleosynthesis, demonstrating that virtually all elements heavier than hydrogen and helium were forged in the hearts of stars. This research, expanded by Margaret Burbidge, Geoffrey Burbidge, William Fowler, and Fred Hoyle in their seminal 1957 paper, often called B superscript 2FH, revealed that the carbon in our cells, the calcium in our bones, and the iron in our blood were all manufactured in stellar furnaces billions of years before Earth formed. "We are made of star stuff," Carl Sagan would later famously observe, though this poetic phrase understates the remarkable journey these atoms have taken. The oxygen you are breathing right now was likely produced in a massive star that exploded before our solar system existed. Those oxygen atoms have been recycled countless times through geological processes, atmospheric cycles, and countless organisms before reaching your lungs. Dr. Jennifer Eigenbrode, an astrobiologist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center who studies organic compounds in extreme environments, explains, the atoms in living organisms are constantly being exchanged with the environment. A carbon atom in your body today might have been part of a dinosaur millions of years ago, a tree hundreds of years ago, or the exhaust from a car last year. This continuous recycling of matter manifests dramatically when we examine the carbon cycle. Through photosynthesis, plants incorporate atmospheric carbon dioxide into their tissues. When animals consume plants, they incorporate this carbon into their own bodies. Upon death and decomposition, these carbon atoms return to soil or atmosphere, beginning the cycle anew. Research published in 2015 by ecologist Susan Trumbore demonstrated that a single carbon atom might cycle through a forest ecosystem dozens of times over just a few centuries. The nitrogen in your DNA has an equally fascinating journey. The triple bonds in atmospheric nitrogen, N2, are extremely strong, requiring significant energy to break. In nature, this process, nitrogen fixation, occurs primarily through specialized bacteria. In 1909, Fritz Haber developed an industrial process for nitrogen fixation, fundamentally altering our relationship with this element. Today, approximately 80% of the nitrogen atoms in your body likely pass through the Haber-Bosch process, a startling example of how human technology has inserted itself into life's elemental cycles. Princeton University ecologist Andrew Dobson put it succinctly in his 2021 paper on nutrient cycling: "We have dramatically altered Earth's nitrogen cycle more than any other elemental cycle, creating a global experiment with unpredictable consequences for all living organisms." Water, too, undergoes continuous cycling. The hydrologist James Kirchner calculated in a 2003 study that a water molecule spends, on average, about 9 days in the atmosphere before falling as precipitation. That same molecule might spend weeks in a river, centuries in a deep aquifer, or minutes in your body before continuing its journey. Some water molecules in your morning coffee might have once passed through a Tyrannosaurus rex. These atomic journeys extend beyond cycles to include evolutionary transitions that blur the boundaries between species. Consider mitochondria, the power plants within your cells. In the 1960s, biologist Lynn Margulis championed the then controversial endosymbiotic theory, proposing that mitochondria were once free-living bacteria that entered into a symbiotic relationship with larger cells. Genetic evidence has overwhelmingly supported this theory, meaning that within each human cell resides the descendant of an entirely different organism, a bacterial hitchhiker that became essential to our existence. The evolutionary biologist W. Ford Doolittle took this concept further in his research on lateral gene transfer, demonstrating that genes can move between unrelated species rather than just from parent to offspring. A groundbreaking 2015 study led by Alastair Crisp at the University of Cambridge identified at least 145 genes in the human genome that appear to have been horizontally transferred from bacteria, fungi, and other organisms. You are, in part, a genetic mosaic. Our microbiome represents yet another way life blurs species boundaries. The human body hosts approximately 38 trillion microbial cells, roughly equal to the number of human cells, according to revised estimates published by Ron Milo and colleagues in 2016. These microbes contribute essential functions to human biology, from digestion to immune system regulation. As microbiologist Martin Blaser notes in his research, we are not simply human but rather a superorganism, a collection of human and microbial cells and genes. This perspective forces us to reconsider what constitutes an individual. Biologist Scott Gilbert, a pioneer in ecological developmental biology, argues in his 2012 paper that we have never been individuals in the biological sense. The boundaries between self and other, between human and environment, become increasingly porous the more closely we examine them. Even our evolutionary history demonstrates this borrowing. The paleontologist Neil Shubin, whose team discovered the transitional fossil Tiktaalik rosei in 2004, often points out that human anatomy bears the imprint of our evolutionary past. Our arms and legs developed from fish fins, and the architecture of our ears contains modified bones that once formed part of the jaw in our distant ancestors. Your body is a walking museum of natural history, Shubin writes in his book, Your Inner Fish. The parts of our bodies that we share with other animals tend to have deep evolutionary histories. Perhaps nowhere is this borrowing more evident than in our genetic code. The ENCODE, Encyclopedia of DNA Elements, project, launched in 2003, revealed that portions of human DNA originated from viruses that infected our evolutionary ancestors. These endogenous retroviruses make up approximately 8% of the human genome, according to a 2016 analysis by Cedric Fechot and colleagues. Some of these viral elements now perform essential functions in human development. Syncytin, a protein crucial for placenta formation, originated from a retrovirus that infected our primate ancestors more than 25 million years ago. Viruses have been genetic innovators throughout evolution, explains virologist Luis P. Villarreal, founding director of the Center for Virus Research at UC Irvine. They have introduced novel genetic material that organisms have repurposed for their own benefit. The material composition of Earth itself represents another dimension of this borrowing. Geologist Walter Alvarez, whose team in 1980 discovered evidence for the asteroid impact that contributed to dinosaur extinction, reminds us that Earth continuously exchanges material with the cosmos. Approximately 40,000 tons of cosmic dust falls to Earth annually, while our planet loses about 95,000 tons of hydrogen and helium to space each year. Recent research in cosmochemistry has revealed even more surprising connections. In 2019, Philip Heck and colleagues at the Field Museum analyzed meteoritic dust grains formed before our solar system existed. These presolar grains contain isotopic signatures indicating they formed in other stars, making them the oldest solid material humans have ever handled, older than Earth itself. When we study these presolar grains, we are directly touching material formed in ancient stars, Heck explains. It is the closest thing to time travel in science. Even the oxygen we breathe has an extraordinary history. Before photosynthetic organisms evolved approximately 3.4 billion years ago, Earth's atmosphere contained virtually no oxygen. The Great Oxygenation Event, beginning roughly 2.4 billion years ago, represents one of the most significant biological revolutions in Earth's history. Cyanobacteria, transforming solar energy into chemical bonds, released oxygen as a waste product, fundamentally altering Earth's chemistry and enabling the evolution of complex life. This oxygen revolution illustrates how profoundly life shapes its environment, creating conditions that enable new forms of biological innovation. As Earth scientist James Lovelock proposed in his Gaia hypothesis in the 1970s, life and Earth's physical systems have co-evolved, each influencing the other in a complex dance of adaptation. The atmospheric scientist Paul Crutzen, who won the Nobel Prize for his work on atmospheric chemistry, designated our current geological epoch the Anthropocene to acknowledge humanity's unprecedented impact on Earth's systems. Human activities now move more sediment than all natural processes combined, alter atmospheric composition, and drive extinction rates far above background levels. We have become a geological force, Crutzen wrote in a 2002 paper in Nature. The impacts of human activities will continue for thousands of years, even if they stop today. This concept of borrowing extends beyond biology to shape how we understand consciousness itself. Neuroscientist Anil Seth, in his research on the predictive nature of perception, argues that consciousness emerges from the brain's continuous predictions about causes of sensory inputs. We do not passively perceive the world, Seth explains in his 2021 review paper, we actively generate it through prediction. Our conscious experience, then, represents another form of borrowing, an internal model constructed from sensory data and prior expectations. The colors we perceive, the sounds we hear, the textures we feel, all are mental constructs, representations rather than direct access to reality. This perspective on life as a temporary arrangement of borrowed elements transforms how we understand our place in the natural world. We are not separate from nature but deeply embedded within it, physically, evolutionarily, and ecologically. The boundaries we perceive between species, between living and non-living, between self and environment, dissolve under scientific scrutiny. As the conservationist Aldo Leopold wrote in 1949, we abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. This ecological wisdom gains new significance when we recognize ourselves as temporary configurations in the continuous flow of matter through Earth's systems. The paleontologist and evolutionary biologist Stephen Jay Gould often emphasized the contingent nature of evolutionary history. In his 1989 book Wonderful Life, he argued that if we could replay the tape of evolution, the outcomes would differ dramatically each time. This contingency highlights both the remarkable uniqueness of each species and the profound interconnectedness of all life through shared ancestry and material exchange. Understanding ourselves as borrowers rather than owners has profound implications for how we conceptualize our responsibilities to future life. The atoms currently arranged as human beings, cities, and technologies will eventually disperse and reconfigure into new forms. The average atom in your body will be part of something else within decades. Ecologist Daniel Jansen captures this perspective in his work on tropical forest restoration in Costa Rica. You are not saving biodiversity, he explains, you are buying time for it to save itself. By preserving habitats and species today, we maintain the building blocks for future evolutionary innovations we cannot predict. The recognition that all species represent temporary configurations of borrowed materials offers a scientific foundation for both humility and wonder. We are participants in an ancient, ongoing process of material transformation that preceded us by billions of years and will continue long after our species is gone. As the physicist Richard Feynman once observed, the atoms in our bodies are traceable to stars that manufactured them in their cores and exploded these enriched ingredients across our galaxy, billions of years ago. For this reason, we are biologically connected to every other living thing in the world. We are chemically connected to all molecules on Earth. And we are atomically connected to all atoms in the universe. In this light, life is not something we possess but something in which we participate, a temporary dance of atoms that have seen the birth of stars, the formation of planets, and the long evolutionary journey from single cells to the vast diversity of modern life. We are not born anew, but borrowed from the cosmos, and what we borrow we must eventually return.